Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Completionist. For this episode, guys, I want to do an episode of my personal struggles as a video game completionist. So, I haven't done a video for this series in quite a while, so for any of you that are new to this channel, what this series is that I talk about some of the personal struggles that I have as a video game completionist. And for the few times that I have done an episode like this, I usually talk about a game in particular that I've had a lot of personal struggle with when it comes to actually completing it to 100%. But this time, guys, it's not really a game that I want to address, it's more like an aspect of a game that can often be really difficult for me, and it's actually one aspect that actually tries my patience, as a gamer and as a video game completionist. So I wanted to talk to you about what that aspect was and some of the games in which that aspect really got the better of me. Because one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is because, unfortunately, during the time that I spent home during the winter, I didn't get as many games completed as what I would have liked. I try to aim for a golden rule of 5 games to complete during the 3.5 to 4 months that I take off, but at the filming of this video I only have 3 completed, and I was hoping to get my 4th game completed before I would have to travel back to Alberta, but unfortunately it's not going to happen because of the one aspect that I'm about to talk to you guys about, and that aspect is the random enemy drop. So for those who are unfamiliar about what the random enemy drop is that for me, one of my priorities as a video game completionist is that I do try to collect every item or every piece of armor or every weapon in the game, and specifically JRPGs. And usually by the end of the game I want to make sure that each character in my party has the best weapons and armor and accessories and things along those lines. I don't necessarily go for max stats. I don't aim to get every character to level 99, or with some of those Tri-Ace games, especially Star Ocean, you can get your characters up to level 255. That really has no appeal to me unless it unlocks a specific skill or something along those lines. But for me, I try to collect one of every item. That's just a personal priority of mine, and it's actually been really difficult, especially to abide by that completionist tendency, because some of the games I have played in the last 5 to 10 years, my patience is really tested by the whole aspect of the random enemy drop, because in a lot of the games that I play, some of the enemies in JRPGs actually have really atrocious drop rates. Like, for example, 1 out of every 256 encounters with a certain enemy. And there are times that you fight a boss that, you have a 1% drop rate. And that can be incredibly demotivating, for a video game completionist, but it's something that I still strive for, just because I do like the challenge of it. Because the thing is that, one of my friends on Facebook, often asks, why do you put yourself through this? Why do you, put yourself through so much pain just for something that means so insignificant? And for me, I just like the challenge. I just like the fact that it exists, and I would love to achieve it. And it's just that it's more of just a personal mission. It's just more of a personal guideline of mine. It's something that I strive for. And regardless if the random enemy drops work for me, it doesn't make me a better gamer than anybody else. It's just one of the many rules that I place on myself when it comes to trying to complete games to 100%. But some of the games that I'm going to mention to you guys, I'm sure there are other games, not necessarily in this JRPG genre, that probably in the Western RPG genre, or even you know, certain PC games, I'm sure the drop rates are even more atrocious. But I just wanted to talk to you guys about some of the games where the random drop rates have literally either driven me insane, or I'm still in the process of trying to complete them, because that I still keep striving for that random drop rate. And it's just how it is. It's just one of my personal preferences as a video game completionist. And basically, you know, a random drop rate, you know, for anyone that's not familiar with it, is, you know, when you defeat a certain enemy, you know, you have a percentage of that enemy dropping a specific item or a specific piece of armor or a specific weapon, and when you defeat them. But usually the better the weapon, the better the armor, you know, the less likely the enemy is going to drop it, you know, when you actually defeat it. And some of the games that I've actually played have really atrocious drop rates, and I've spent countless hours trying to get the best items and get the best weapons, get the best armor in the game, because there are just some games that you're going to have to put yourself through that kind of pain, especially if you do want to get that random drop rate. So let's talk about some of the games that I personally think have really horrible drop rates, but I still keep at it. One of the games I have completed, and the other two games I have not completed, and I'm still aiming for that. So anyway, let's aim for the first game, guys. So the first game is a game that I have completed, that I have done a how to complete this game on this channel, and it's a Capcom JRPG, and that is Breath of Fire 3. Now, Breath of Fire 3 has some really, really atrocious drop rates. You know, to get Ryu's best sword in the game, which is the Goo King sword, it has a 1 out of 256 drop rate. So you'd have to possibly fight 256 battles before you fight one, or maybe not. Maybe you're even really lucky to maybe get the drop rate from the goo that you fight in the final dungeon, you know, the very first time. But a lot of the best weapons and armor in the game have really bad drop rates. And the majority of these drop rates come from enemies in the final dungeon in the game. But I've spent probably tens of hours trying to get every rare drop in the game, because a lot of the enemies in Breath of Fire 3 drop one-of-a-kind weapons and armor that are often usually the best weapons and armor, you know, for each respective character. Now, one of the things that you do have working for you in Breath of Fire 3 is that you can get a skill from a master that if you cast this spell on a certain enemy, it cuts the drop rate in half. So instead of 1 out of 256, it's actually 1 out of 128. So, but it's still a really bad drop rate. And for me, when I discovered like the amount of enemies that I would have to fight in order to get some of the best drop rates in the game, it actually felt really demotivating, because like I actually exceeded the timer on Breath of Fire 3, because the timer only goes up to like 99 hours and 59 minutes, and I definitely exceeded that. It's just like, I remember when I was in the process of playing that game, there used to be times in which I used to maybe spend 2 to 3 hours a day just working on random drop rates, and I'd get nothing for it. You know, if I was lucky, I'd probably get 1 from maybe half a dozen to 8 or 9 enemies where I needed to get the rare drop rate. But eventually, after a lot of persistence, you know, I managed to do it. And I do have every character with the best weapon and armor lineup, but it was quite a battle to actually do, and it was probably the most time-consuming aspect of actually completing Breath of Fire 3. But I'm happy to get it done. But the drop rates in that game were really atrocious. Still need the water, guys. So guys, for the second game that I'm working on, it's a game that I'm not very far into. I started playing it this summer, but because of how atrocious the drop rates are, I'm lucky if I maybe spend an hour on it a week, because I just can't justify spending hours and hours and hours in a single day just to see if I will get the drop rate to work for me. So it's actually an SNES game. It's a Final Fantasy game that I've actually never beaten before in my entire life, because I keep getting tripped up on getting the original weapons and armor that you can get in the game, because a lot of them do have really bad drop rates, and that game is Final Fantasy II or Final Fantasy IV, but called Final Fantasy II for the SNES when it was released in North America. This game is probably going to be a multi-year project. I'm only to Mount Ordeals right now, and that's not even a quarter into the game. There's still a lot of game left to play, and unfortunately there are 2 random drop rates that I need in that dungeon in order to progress through the game. And I've been working on it. I spend an hour on it probably every 2 or 3 days, just getting into random battles, hoping to come across the certain enemy that I need, and hoping I'll get the random enemy drop. But one of the biggest problems with Final Fantasy IV is whatever the random enemy drops are. Whatever the random enemy drops were in Breath of Fire 3, it's actually that much worse in Final Fantasy IV. And the reason why I say that, guys, is that Final Fantasy IV has a random drop system where random drops will actually occur a little more often, but you're not guaranteed to get the rare drop. Like, a lot of the enemies have a common item drop that you'll often get. Like, usually if you sink an hour into it, you'll get the common drop from a certain enemy, but you need the rare drop of the enemy. So you got a chance getting the common enemy drop, but then you have another rarity on top of that you need the enemy to drop an item, but then you need the enemy to drop the rare item. And that just adds an extra layer to the random item drop from a certain enemy that has just never worked out for me. And there's a lot of them in Final Fantasy IV. Obviously the most infamous one in Final Fantasy IV is the pink puff, where you get the pink tail, which I think gives you the adamant armor. And in the original Final Fantasy IV game for the SNES, someone told me you don't get alerts. So when you go on the moon and you're in the final dungeon where you fight the pink puffs, you just have to hope that you run into them. And then hopefully, if you're lucky, you'll actually get the rare enemy drop. But it's just getting the enemy drop and hoping it's not the common item and hoping it's the rare item. But it's a test of endurance, guys, because even though I've been playing Final Fantasy IV over the last 8, 9, 10 months, I still haven't even gotten the drops at Mount Ordeals, and I still keep working on it. But I try not to spend too much time with it, because I can't justify wasting 10 hours of a day off just going back and forth and fighting the same battles over and over and over again. I can't justify it, so I'll only usually spend an hour. And if I don't get it, then I'll just move on to another game that I'm actually trying to complete. So that's just a horrible aspect of Final Fantasy IV, but nobody said completing games was going to be easy. So, and on to the third game, guys. It's a game that I'm actually trying to complete right now, but I hit a snag. I'm getting pretty far in the game, but unfortunately there is a boss fight in the game that has a 1% drop. And that's pretty demotivating. And you also have to steal a unique item from this boss as well. And the stealing ain't so bad. I can usually get the steal to work on every time I fight the boss, but it's just hoping to get that 1% drop. But it hasn't happened yet, and I'm running out of time. So I don't think I'm going to get that game completed while I'm home. And that game is Tales of Destiny for the PlayStation 1. This is really the only rare item drop that that I hit a snag with. The progression through the game has been going through really easily. You know, I haven't had too many hiccups trying to get this game completed, but then when I was doing my research and I made it to this specific boss fight and said, yep, this is the only way you're going to be able to get this item, and it has a 1% drop rate. So I think I fought the boss maybe about 20 times. I only fight the boss maybe 7 or 8 times at every gaming session. And then I just got to put it down and, you know, play something else. And it still hasn't dropped yet. So maybe when I get home during the summer, or, you know, maybe when I get home next winter, I can actually get that random enemy drop. And hopefully that is the only one I need to worry about. I don't know what else in the game I have to look out for. I certainly hope that's the only one, or that's the only boss fight that I have to go up against that has a rare item enemy drop. But I don't know. I haven't done my research that far into the game, but as far as I know, I've gotten everything in the game thus far, and it's actually been a really enjoyable experience. So, and that's really the only the item drop problems that I've hit with that game. But sometimes, guys, when I decide to pick the games that I want to complete, you never know what it's going to throw at you with regards to completion. And completing games is never easy, and I think two of the strongest mental aspects you need to have when it comes to completing games is you need to have endurance and you need to have patience. And thankfully, I consider patience to be one of my strongest attributes. But I certainly hope I can get Tales of Destiny completed, so, you know, I can move on to the next game. So those are the 3 games that personally I've had problems with when it comes to trying to get the rare enemy drop, and to get a specific rare item or rare weapon or rare piece of armor. But, you know, some of the other games that, you know, I've done, I'll just briefly talk about. You know, the Castlevania DS games. You know, Order of Ecclesia and Portrait of Ruin, and, you know, Dawn of Sorrow. You know, there have been times in which, you know, I've equipped, you know, certain rings that will increase the drop rate of specific enemies, but like so many enemies, you know, they have like maybe a 2% drop rate, or, you know, a 5% drop rate. You're just going back and forth into the same 2 screens, the same 2 rooms, and just defeating the enemy over and over and over again until, you know, you get the drop that you need. And another game that I'm currently playing and just trying to get through is Earthbound. So, you know, one of the big random enemy drops that I was trying to get is the Sword of Kings, and, you know, that took quite a few gaming sessions to actually get. I did manage to get it, but I still haven't completed the game yet. So, but anyway, guys, I would love to hear what are some of the games that you personally had a horrible history with regards to the random enemy drop, and trying to get those rare drops to get some of the best items or weapons or armor in the game, because all the examples that I provided to you are fairly older examples, and obviously you guys play a hell of a lot more newer games than what I do, so I would love to hear your guys's suggestions on some of the random enemy drops that you guys have tried to get, and if anything has a really horrible drop rate that's less than 1%, or, you know, or even worse than a 1 out of 256 drop rate. So anyway, guys, that takes care of another episode of The Completionist. So thanks for watching, and as always, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best. Later.